Hello and welcome to PeopleSoft channel. Today I am very excited to start a new course, Object Oriented Programming in PeopleSoft. If you are visiting my channel for the first time, my name is Siva Koya and I try my best to make PeopleSoft concepts easy for you. I'll start by explaining you the fundamental difference between procedural oriented language and object oriented language. Then we will go through some popular languages out there, what kind of techniques they use, and finally we will get our feet wet on object oriented programming concepts, abstraction, encapsulation, and inheritance. We will practically apply these concepts on a PeopleSoft application. I hope you got some idea what's in store for you. Without any delay, let's get started. When we program in procedural oriented language, basically we provide a bunch of instructions and system executes them in sequential order. We use variables to hold data and functions to perform computations or a specific functionality. In procedural oriented language, most of the time variables and functions are defined at two different places. Sometimes it gets complicated to understand the impact of our changes. To solve this problem, they combined variables and functions into one single unit and they called it object. All we need to do is slice our problem statement into multiple objects and our program is all about interactions between those objects. Hence it is known as object-oriented language. Let me give you a simple example to make it easy for you. Imagine user requested a page where he should be able to input two values and system should be able to add those values and display the result on the page. When we program this requirement in procedural oriented language, basically we create two variables to hold the value entered by the user and create a function called addition to add the values. On the other hand, in object-oriented language, we create an object called calculator. Define two properties to hold the data entered by the user. Within the same object, we define a method called calculate addition that does the calculation for us. In our program, all we need to do is bring up this object calculator and use it for addition. Object-oriented programming feels more real and flexible. I hope you got some idea what I'm talking about. If not, don't worry. I know I just scratched the surface. We will do a few hands-on exercises pretty soon to understand better. I said in my example, we create objects in object-oriented programming. How do we create these objects? In order to understand that, we need to understand a concept called abstraction. Let's talk about it. As we already discussed before, in object-oriented programming, we deal with objects. And how do we create these objects? That's when abstraction comes into play. Abstraction is nothing but modeling. Abstraction is used everywhere. For example, when you drive on a car, when you see a red signal, you stop. Green, you go. Why is that? Because it is a model or abstraction that is accepted by the consensus. In that model, traffic light represents a specific state. Likewise, if we have to program something specific to a person, we have to create model for that person, define different states for that person like first name, last name as properties. At the same time, we have to create methods relevant to our problem statement. If it is confusing, don't worry, I will guide you every step of the way. I think it's enough of talking. Let's get some hands-on experience. But before that, let me answer this important question. How can we program a model? Using class. Let's start with that. Alright, it's time to get our hands dirty. Here is a simple PeopleSoft page. When a user inputs two numbers and if he clicks on the add button, the result should be displayed here. Let's accomplish this simple task using object-oriented programming. I will go ahead and open my app designer. I just opened my app designer. Before we can code anything, first we need to spend some time at the drawing board to model the solution to our problem. Since my case is pretty simple, I will create a model or class called calculator. I will define two properties to hold the two numbers from our page, and finally a method called calculate addition that calculates the total value. Let me go ahead and do that. Before we can create a new class, first we have to create a new application package. Like the name says, it is a package of application classes. We can logically group classes related to a specific functionality under one application package. In my case, I'll go ahead and name it as a demo application package. Now it's time to create a new application class. In order to do that, I will go ahead, right click and click on Insert App Class, and I will name my class as calculator because it's a calculator. Usually class names are named after a noun phrase. I'll go ahead and click OK, and I will go ahead and double click on our class. In order to create a new class, I need to use a keyword called class, and we need to name our class. Don't worry, even if you do not spell your class name properly, system will automatically fix it when you save the class. And I will go ahead and save our class. Now I will go ahead define two properties to hold two values from our page. Property, and it is of number type, and I will name it as number 1. And I will follow the same process for our second property. Now it's time to create the method that does the calculation for us. First, we need to declare our method within our class. It should start with method, and we need to give the method name. Normally it starts with a verb, calculate addition, and it should return a number. Returns number. Now let's go ahead and implement our class. I'll say method calculate addition, and it should return the sum of the first number. When you declare the properties, you should not use ampersand. Number 1 plus. This means we are picking the variable data within the same class. Number 2 semicolon end method, and I will go ahead and save our class. Now our class or model is ready. Let's pull an object from this model and use it to calculate the value on our page. In order to do that, I have navigated to our button field change event. In order to leverage the application class we just created, we have to import that specific application class into our event using import keyword. We can specify if we want to import all the application classes within that app package using star, but in our case we will just import our application class. Like I mentioned before, class is just a model or a structure. Imagine it as a cookie cutting machine whose job is to create cookies. Likewise, we can create multiple instances of an object from the same class and use that object for our programming or calculation. I hope you got my point. Before we can create an object from a class, first we need to declare it. To declare object, just like any other variable, I'll start with local keyword, and I will give full navigation for our class, and I will give our object name. We just defined the structure of our object. In order to create this specific object, we need to use create keyword. And how do we create it? Based on class. This specific statement essentially creates an instance of object and allocates memory space. Since now this object exists in the memory, we can go ahead and fill the information into it. Finally, I will populate the result value from our method which does the actual calculation. That's it guys, this is a simple example how we can use object-oriented programming in PeopleSoft. Now I will go ahead and test our changes by inputting some values. And I will click on the add button. As you can see, using our object-oriented program, the result was calculated. That's it guys for today. I'm really sorry this video took more than anticipated amount of time. I'm going to cover the other object-oriented concepts in my upcoming video. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week. That's pretty much about it for today guys. If you like the content, don't forget to hit that like button below. And if you want more of these videos, subscribe my channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week. Until then, keep learning.